Hi, good morning, viewer. Welcome back to my channel, Hocantalk. Now, today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic called the Straits of Malacca. Now, this crucial waterway is situated between the Malay Peninsula and the Indonesian island of Sumatra. The countries surrounding this strait are Malaysia, which is to the north and west, Indonesia to the south and west, and Singapore at the narrowest point of the strait near the southern entrance. The Strait of Malacca is the primary shipping channel between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, linking major economies in Asia such as China, Japan, and South Korea with markets in the Middle East, Europe, and Africa. Now, if you look at the second slide, you can see that the Strait of Malacca is one of the major choke points on Earth. It is a classic global choke point due to its extreme narrowness. At its narrowest point, the Phillip Channel in the Singapore Strait, it is only about 2.7 kilometers wide. And this naturally constricts maritime traffic, making the area highly sensitive. And in view of the volume of traffic, because of the location and the narrowness, the Strait of Malacca is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. It is essential for the transport of a significant percentage of global trade. If you look at the slide, you can see all the numbers that I put there. You can read carefully. Particular oil and liquefied natural gas, making it vital for global energy security. And the next slide, you can see that the strategic importance of the Strait of Malacca. Now, because of the combination of high volume traffic, narrow passage, and essential global trade links makes the Strait of a focus of intense strategic interest for major world powers, as any disruption here could have profound economic consequences globally. In this next slide, you can see the massive volume of annual traffic that pass through the Strait of Malacca. The Strait of Malacca is among the world's top two busiest shipping lanes, competing only with the Strait of Dover and the English Channel. Now, the number of vessels that actually pass through the Strait of Malacca on an annual basis is estimated to be 100,000 vessels. And on average, this equates to roughly 270 to 300 large ships per day navigating its narrowest passages. If you look at the slide, you can see that the traffic growth has steadily increased over the last decade and driven by increasing trade between Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. The global trade share of Strait of Malacca is around 25 to 30% of the total global maritime trade by volume. That means globally, about 30% of the maritime trade need to pass through the Strait of Malacca. The economic value, the annual value of trade flowing through the strait is estimated to exceed 3.5 trillion US dollar annually. So this means any significant disruption would immediately escalate into tension throughout the global economy. Now, let's move forward to the next slide. I've produced the kind of product or the energy flow through the strait. Now, the strait is basically a general purpose highway for trade. The most common vessel types include large container ship, dry bulk carrier that transport coal, iron ore, and grain, and massive energy tanker. The major commodity that pass through the straits are number one, manufactured goods and container shipment. This category represents the largest portion by value, including everything from electronics and machinery to clothing and automobiles, shipped in standardized container ship. The next is energy product. The strait is also a very essential lifeline for the energy passage linking the east and the west. It facilitates the movement of crude oil and petroleum products like gasoline and diesel, as well as liquefied natural gas, LNG. Other bulk commodities like coal, palm oil, and various minerals are also common. Now, while gender trade is massive, the energy flows are particularly critical and politically sensitive. The strait is the primary artery supplying energy from the Middle East and Africa to the growing economies of Asia. The oil flow or the oil trade is a critical matrix of its importance of the Strait of Malacca, and is approximately 16 to 17 million barrels of oil per day that pass through this strait. To put this into perspective, this represents roughly 15% of the total daily global oil consumption. And come to LNG, it is also a key route for LNG, carrying significant percentage of the gas needed for power generation in Japan, South Korea, and China. So any disruption would jeopardize energy security for all these major economies in the Asia. Now, in the next slide, you can see that I put down there all the countries that are heavily dependent on the Strait of Malacca. Now, due to the commodity mix and the geographic endpoint of the shipping routes, a few select countries are uniquely vulnerable to any disruption in the strait. Now, the most dependent country here will be China. And China is the strait largest user, followed by Japan and South Korea. Other major economies with high dependency include Taiwan and increasingly India. The Malacca dilemma, a phrase which was coined by the former China President Hu Jintao to describe China's extreme strategic vulnerability. Now, why? China imports about 75 to 80% of its oil demand, and roughly up to 80% of those imports must pass through the Strait of Malacca. So naturally, Chinese leaders fears that in a period of geopolitical crisis or conflict, a hostile navy power could block this single choke point and effectively cutting off the China energy lifeline and strangling its economy. So what happened? So this has driven Chinese government to implement strategy to diversify their import routes, including pipelines to Myanmar, Central Asia, and Russia, and initiative like the Belt and Road to develop overland corridors like the China-Pakistan economic corridors. Now, the next slide, I will just spend a little time on it. You can see that in the past, colonial power, the ancient empire, all dominating the Strait of the Malacca. But currently, the Strait of Malacca is based on the rules of UNCLOS. I've done another video on the law of the sea. So for more information about UNCLOS, you all can refer to the other video that I've just posted on YouTube recently. Now let's look at the next slide. Actually, in the next slide, I capture all the summary about the governance of the Strait of Malacca. Now, the legal governance of the Strait of Malacca is a very unique and precise arrangement defined by international law, especially the law of the sea UNCLOS. Please refer to my previous video. Now, while geographically bounded by coastal states, the strait does not have a single owner in the traditional sovereign sense. Instead, it operates under a sophisticated system called the shared jurisdiction and functional responsibilities. Now, the primary destination of the Strait of Malacca under UNCLOS is a strait used for international navigation. And this classification is the cornerstone of its legal status. It recognizes that although part of the strait fall within the territorial waters of Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, the waterway role as a global highway necessitates a different legal standard than regular coastal territorial seas. So, what are all the rules and the rights of other people who use the Strait of Malacca? So the defining right within an international strait is the right of transit passage. This is under UNCLOS Articles 37 to 44. Now, this is a unique and potent right that balances global trade needs with coastal state sovereignty. For all the vessel, transit passage means that for all ships and aircraft, regardless of nationality and flag, have the freedom of navigation and overflight for the single purpose of continuous and expeditious transit between one part of the high seas and another. And the ships enjoy freedom of navigation for commercial and military purposes. Now, the next slide, I actually produced something very interesting, which is regarding pirates in the Strait of Malacca. Now, I mean, from crisis, all these pirate incident, while the numbers might look a little bit alarming at first glance, the qualitative nature of all these pirate sea incidents have changed dramatically over the last 2 decades. Now, previously, the threat is the region was plagued by violent organized pirates gangs, and they conducted audacious hijacking of entire tankers, held crews for ransom, and use heavy weaponry. That's the reason why this earned the Strait a war risk designation from insurance company underwriters, severely impact the global shipping costs. But the situation today is not severe as categorized by the word more control. The risk of violent armed takeover is now extremely low. Now, piracy in this region, once a headline grabbing global crisis, has now entered into a new phase categorized by high volume but exceptionally low severity. Why is this so? Because this is because a sophisticated network of joint patrols and regional intelligence sharings has fundamentally altered the security landscape. Now, the success, of course, is due to the cooperation of all the regional country operating along the Strait of Malacca. Now, data from 2025 shows that a significant statistical paradox happened. Now, there's a sharp rise in reported incidents, but yet simultaneously the lowest level of violence recorded. So right now, the latest numbers reported that there are about 100 plus minor incidents, but even though this is a substantial increase compared to 2024, but the actual violence and the level of violence involved is very, very low. Now, the regarding law of the sea on pirate sea. Now, if the pirate sea happen in the high sea, and because the high seas are a global common, so universal jurisdiction applies. So meaning that any country navies can seize a pirate ship and prosecute the pirates. However, for Strait of Malacca, nearly all incidents in the Strait of Malacca and Singapore Strait occur within the 12 nautical mile territorial sea of Indonesia, Malaysia, or Singapore. So, what happened under this incident? The actual functional jurisdiction therefore belongs to the coastal states. The responsibility to investigate, arrest, and prosecute these pirates falls solely on the nation police and legal system of Indonesia, Malaysia, or Singapore, depending on whose water the crime occurred in. Now, so far we have introduced most aspect of the Strait of Malacca, including the location, the economics numbers that generated by this strait, the country that are most vulnerable or most dependent on the Strait of Malacca, and also regarding the current governance, the law that govern this Strait of Malacca, and also we touch on pirate sea issue, used to be a big issue for the Strait of Malacca. Now, the next slide that I have created is to give you all some comparison about some other choke points in the world. So here, if you look at the slide, I actually put down there Strait of Malacca, Strait of Hormuz, and Suez Canal and the Panama Canal. So I actually put down all these choke point in the world, and I put down all the wordings there. So for simplicity, I won't read through them line by line. You all can take a look. I just want to put this slide up to give you all to show you all a comparison. So at least you know that on the relative basis, the importance of Strait of Malacca. So from here, you can actually see that the Strait of Malacca actually is a very, very critical choke point in the world. Now, let's look at the next slide, which is coming to the end of this video. I think this video will never be complete if I do not mention the recent event that happened, which is the Indonesian government actually proposed to collect a toll. Now, the next slide, you look at this slide, I actually put down all the argument for and all the argument against this toll. Now, this is one of the most significant and legally sensitive debates surrounding the Strait of Malacca. And This highlights the fundamental tension between a littoral state desire for national sovereignty and the international community's rights to access a global common straits of navigation. Now, the Indonesia potential argument for a toll are rooted in the massive responsibilities and the costs associated with bordering such a busy waterway. Those who propose that a toll should be collected will frame a toll not as a restriction, but as a necessary service fee, which is allowed under the UNCLOS. Under UNCLOS, toll is not allowed. So the argument for Indonesia to collect a toll is that the Strait of Malacca is a primary target for piracy, armed robbery, and maritime terrorism. And securing the length of the strait requires a massive investment in naval patrols, surveillance system, radar, and personnel, costs that are currently borne almost entirely by the littoral states. So a toll could fund a dedicated security force. Another reason why Indonesia asked for a toll is for the maintaining of navigation infrastructure, because navigation requires expensive aids to navigation, the lights, the beacons, precise and updated hydrographic survey, and the maintenance of traffic separation scheme. So all these surrounding state must also maintain ready to deploy search and rescue capabilities. So all these involve money. The third reason to argue for collecting a toll is environmental protection. The risk of major oil spills is catastrophic, and littoral states must fund oil spill response teams, equipment, and training, and bear the environmental and economic costs when accident happen. So, those who propose for the toll say that a toll could fund an environmental response and restoration fund. Of course, the idea to collect toll also faced with a lot of argument that is against it, and the reason for all these argument that against collecting of toll based on the following reason. Number one, if you collect toll, this is a violation of UNCLOS principle. Now, this is the most critical legal argument because the fundamental rules of UNCLOS is that no charge may be levied upon foreign ships by reason only of their passage through the territorial sea. So the entire concept of transit passage is that it must be allowed to pass through without any toll. So if there's any toll levy or charge solely for the right of passage is by definition a violation of the convention. Another argument against the toll is the disruption of global trade. As the transit, which is the Strait of Malacca, represent about up to 30% of global trade and 16 million barrels of oil per day, any toll would immediately inflate the cost of shipping. This call would definitely affect global supply chain, affect the price of energy and consumer goods worldwide. The third argument against collecting the toll is administrative and political nightmare. Now, the calculating, collecting, and distributing a toll fairly across thousands of vessels from hundreds of nations would be extremely complex. It would require the consensus of Malaysia and Singapore, who also border the strait and who are likely to strongly oppose any move that jeopardizes the strait's status as a free waterway. Now, the last argument against the toll come from the oppositions from major trading nations. So the Strait of Malacca biggest user, China, Japan, South Korea, and United States, and of course the EU, European Union, would view a toll as a hostile act and a significant national security threat. They would almost certainly bring a legal challenge to the International Court for Law of the Sea, ITLOS, or use their economic or diplomatic or sometimes maybe even military to block the implementation of collecting a toll. The fact that Indonesia asking for a toll is actually not something new because the idea actually floated a few times by Indonesian officials before, but it has never advanced to a formalized proposal, primarily because of the extreme legal difficulties it presents. So Instead of a unilateral toll, which is seen as illegal under UNCLOS, the focus now has shifted to multilateral cooperation and cooperative mechanisms. Now, what does this mean? This means that the international community has recognized that the littoral states need help managing the strait. But this help must be negotiated, not imposed via a tariff. So, what are the current alternative mechanisms in place? So, there are some. Number one, cooperative mechanism for the Straits of Malacca and Singapore, which is established in the year 2007 under the management of International Maritime Organization (IMO). It provides a framework for user states like China and Japan to voluntarily contribute funds, equipment, or training to the littoral states to improve navigational safety and environmental protection. Number two, it allows voluntary contribution. So major shipping companies and associations sometimes provide voluntary funding for specific navigation aid maintenance projects. And number three, information sharing. So the nation that use the Strait of Malacca the most provides surveillance data and satellite imagery to help littoral states combat piracy. Now, the debate over the toll serves as a constant reminder that the Strait of Malacca is not just a geographical feature, it is a sensitive and dynamic legal zone where the needs of global trade must be continuously balanced against the rights and responsibilities of the nation that flank it. So, with all this, now we come to the end of this video. Now, thank you for watching my video. In this video, we talk about the Strait of Malacca. We talk about the historical, the economics, and also all the numbers to show how significant and how important and how critical the Strait of Malacca is. And also, we highlight about the governance from the viewpoint of UNCLOS, the international law of the sea, and also the past issue faced by them, for example, the piracy. Of course, the video also highlight the latest development, which is the proposed toll by Indonesia, which was later being taken back by the Indonesian government after all the rejection from other neighboring nation. So again, I hope you benefit from today's video, and please subscribe to my video and circulate my video to all your friends so that they can also view this video as well. So thank you very much for watching. See you next video. Bye bye.